that is easily fixable and that the overwhelming majority of the American people and the overwhelming majority of the Congress, I think, would want to be on the side of fixing. We want to get help to people that need help. There are lots of hurting people in this country, both health-related right now and economic now and coming, which also produces a second wave of public health crises for people. We want to get help to people who need help. A number of us are very fiscally conservative and normally spend a lot of time talking about total price tags. None of what we're here to talk about today is about a price tag. We're talking about the fact that one of the fundamental purposes of this bill is to maintain the employee-employer relationship through the trough of the recession that's arriving right now. We want to maintain the employee-employer relationship. We want to celebrate workers. We want to celebrate the dignity of work. And this bill's stated purpose is to do that. One of the fundamental things this bill aims to do is to affirm that employee-employer relationship, and lots of people pulling all-nighters for 4 or 5 nights in a row now have been building components of this bill which try to strengthen and maintain that employee-employer relationship. Unfortunately, there's a massive drafting problem where when you look at the interaction between some of the different components of the bills, it looks like other parts of this bill would actually incentivize the severing of the employee-employer relationship. And that's what we aim to stop, and that's why we're working with the Finance Committee staff right now to draft an amendment that would solve this problem so that you wouldn't incentivize the severing of the employee-employer relationship by having the unemployment insurance provisions in this actually lead to different outcomes than would happen if people wanted to try to maintain their current employer. That matters because of the importance of work, the dignity of work, the long-term worker-employer, small business relationship, but it also matters because we don't want to do anything that would accelerate shortages in critical supply chain and workforce pathways inside some of the critical industries in America. And by critical industries in America, I mean health aides, and I mean grocers, and people operating the takeout deli, and people doing local food delivery, and garbage men. Lots of the important industries in America have median wages which are lower than what would happen under the unemployment benefits portion of this bill. And so we don't want to actually accelerate the severing of that employee-employer relationship. These guys are each going to make some comments, and then we'll take questions as well. Thanks. Tim Scott.
I think Ben has said it well. Our goal is to help this bill get to the finish line as fast as possible. I am in support of the legislation. This drafting error made me pause for a moment. The key to understanding the drafting error is kind of simple. We cannot encourage people to make more money in unemployment than they do in employment. As an example, in South Carolina, the average unemployment or the maximum unemployment is about $326 a week. The way we understand the legislation, the $326 on top of that would be $600 a week. Said differently, someone can make about $926 a week. The way that the legislation is written, the person who makes less than that would make that anyways. So you would be able, a person who makes $20 an hour times 4, $800 a week, could get about half of their income, up to $326 for South Carolina, and then on top of that, they would get an additional $600. So the legislation doesn't envision the ability to have someone pick $10 an hour or $15 an hour or $20 an hour, getting a maximum of 100% of their income. This legislation would not stop at 100% of your income. This legislation would allow you in unemployment to make more than you do in employment. We know that that is a drafting error, and we are simply providing an amendment to fix that so that you do not make more in unemployment than you do when you're working. Lindsey.
We'll know in about an hour as to whether or not this is a drafting error. I hope they're right, but I'm concerned. Let me tell you why. Under this proposal that they agreed to last night, on unemployment, you would be making $24.07 an hour in South Carolina. There are a lot of jobs in South Carolina that do not pay $24.07. I've been one of the biggest advocates of helping the unemployment insurance system as part of a relief package. The maximum benefit, as Tim said, was $326. My goal was to add some federal dollars to the pot to get you back to what you were making with a cap of $600, which is an income of about $49,000. This bill pays you more not to work than if you were working. Very few people are going to turn down a 24-hour deal not to work. To work for 15. The problem for employers is that you've been put out of business because of containment policies that I think will continue aggressively for a while. What do you tell an employee if you own a restaurant or bar in Myrtle Beach? Are you going to say, let me put you on the payroll at your salary of $15 an hour? Or are you going to say, go to the unemployment office and sign up for unemployment, get as much as you can. I know you want the money, you need the money, and there'll be a job waiting on you. If you're a nurse, aide, making $15 or $16 an hour, you're on the front lines here. A lot of doctors' offices are going to have to roll back because elective surgery is no longer a source of income for a bunch of doctors. So, you're going to have all these well-trained nurses that are going to make $24 an hour on unemployment. You're literally incentivizing taking people out of the workforce at a time when we need critical infrastructure supplied with workers. If this is not a drafting era, then it's the worst idea I've seen in a long time, and I'm saying a lot given the fact we're in Washington. To my Democratic colleagues, I have been one of your strongest supporters for upping unemployment insurance, but I never in my wildest dream believed that we would incentivize people to stop working to take unemployment by increasing unemployment wages to $24 an hour. You want to destroy what's left of the economy? Pass it the way it's written. If you want to help people, give them their wages, but don't pay them more not to work.
So I come at this as somebody who started some businesses and some that became large businesses. Also come at it from the standpoint of individual just finished his time as governor about 15 months ago. In my time as governor, we focused on how could we get people off unemployment by getting them a job. And we were able to do that. We added in 8 years 1.7 million jobs. We were down to 61,000 people on unemployment when I left office. So as this happened, I was very supportive of helping workers that don't have a job, on top of the gig workers, the people that getting tips, and also using our existing unemployment system because it's the fastest way to make sure we have a system and the money gets out there. So I've been very supportive. Now we have a virus that we know a lot of people can't work for a variety of reasons, some because government sets it up, others because the economy is hurt. So we've got to help them. But the moment we can go back to work, we cannot create an incentive for people to say, I don't need to come back to work because I can do better someplace else. These employers are going to need these workers to rebuild this economy. So we cannot be paying people more money on unemployment than what they would get paid in their job. So I'm very supportive of this amendment. It's the right thing to do. I know we still have a lot of work to do to get this get the coronavirus behind us, but the moment that happens and we can reopen this economy, we have got to get people back to work so we can rebuild this economy. And it's like what Tim said, people want to work, but don't create the wrong incentive. And if we do, we're going to hurt a lot of businesses and a lot of families in this country.
This is not a drafting error. This was deliberately negotiated with Republican senators, with the White House, with the Democratic senators. So if this is not changed at all, are you going to force the Senate to go through all the procedural steps to get to a final vote?
I am very hopeful that we will get this done very quickly. I think the American people need the resources in this bill. But let me just reinforce why this drafting error, I hope, is so important. I know some disagree with that, but I like to do math, and sometimes I do it kind of fast, but let me just be simple with it. Someone making $15 an hour in South Carolina, working 40 hours a week, makes $600. If you're unemployed, you can get up to $326. You get half your income. So that $600 wage now becomes $300 in unemployment. What the federal government does is it comes in and puts 600 on top of that 300. So now, instead of making 600 when you were working, you're now making 900 not working. How long do you stay in unemployment if you're making 50% more than you were working? The answer, 16 weeks. We believe, I hope that this was an actual error. This bill needs to be done without any question. I think we can get it done here today, and I believe that we'll have an amendment, I pray, in just a couple hours.
Senator Graham, why do you think it's not a drafting error?
Well, I'm hoping it is, but we'll know in a little bit, because the Democrats will say, yeah, you're right, let's fix that. And we should know about the time you write your stories and this gets out. So here's the point for me. I think we've done absolutely the worst thing we could do to stabilize the economy. We have incentivized people not to go back to work. That is just, I just can't imagine the effect in South Carolina and other places when you realize you're getting $24 an hour on unemployment. So every employer in the state has to compete against a $24 an hour minimum wage now, I guess. And isn't the smart thing to make people whole up to about $50,000 and aggressively contain the disease and get the economy open as soon as we can? That's the smart thing.
Senator Graham, Senator Scott, either one of you guys probably answer this question, actually. So is the fix, either as a drafting fix or as an amendment, to cap this at 100% of your income then? That's the fix?
Yes, that's simple.
Okay.
So what we're asking for is really simple. The American people do not think you should get paid more money to not work than to work. And the American people and the stated purposes of this bill are to maintain the employer-employee relationship. America's going to come out of this. We're going to beat the virus, and the economy is going to recover. But we want American families to be thriving again in 6 and 9 months, not years down the road. And if we do something now that says the new baseline American assumption is the government should actually say, this proposition is true, we want people to get more money to not work than to work, the American people don't want that to happen. And so I hear that a lot of people would like to have the fight about what happened on this night versus that night in the negotiating room. I think the charitable desire some of us have is to say, listen, this is an unprecedented time. The pace of writing this bill is clunky and stinky and messy in lots of ways. Let's start with the charitable assumption that the interaction of the different components of this bill just weren't well thought out enough, because the thesis we should debate is, do you want to affirm unemployment response and results and salary and wages as greater than work? No, the American people don't want that. Yeah.
Fix is a cap. And I have a follow-up question, and I apologize, I don't know how to ask this without sounding like I'm being a smartass, and I'm not. But do you understand how bad the optics are to have probably the wealthiest person in the Senate potentially holding up this bill over a couple $100 for some of the poorest people in this country?
You're not talking to me, but I'll weigh in.
So here's what I care about. I want to make sure that our small businesses, all of our businesses, including our hospitals, our nursing homes, everybody can make sure people want to come to work. And I also want to make sure, which in the bill that does it, you have an unemployment system in the states that work, and we need to continue to work that, and we have a supplement to it.
And I just want to say one more thing, because I get everybody in the room, everybody in the country wishes they had Rick Scott's bank account. I get it. But if you go to any coffee shop in Nebraska, you go to Omaha, you go to Lincoln, we have 93 counties, you go to small towns, and you walk into the coffee shop and you say, do we as a people think what America wants to do is say, let's have the federal government build a program that says we want to incentivize severing people's work relationship? Hell no. People believe in work. Work has dignity. Work gives us purpose. Work is how we provide for our families. Work is how we love our neighbors. We want to affirm the worker in America. Working people in America don't want a government that comes in and says, actually, you know, people in D.C. know better than you, and it'd be better to sever your employment relationship. Nobody wants that.
Thank you, sir. When did this drafting error, when was it discovered?
You know, all I know is so how did this happen? We're on the phone today getting briefed. We're all on the phone. And I asked a question, how much is the unemployment benefit from the federal government? $600. I said, okay. Okay, so ask the question. That's $600. Okay, what happens with that $600? So if you're working for a small business and you're a cook and you're making $40,000, the question is, are you eligible for unemployment? Because if you are, you're going to go and make more money, and they can't keep you on the payroll. So it's not about Rick or me or anybody else. We got to create a sustainable system. This pandemic is coming back in the fall. We need to create pandemic systems on unemployment that are sustainable. So if you believe that, why not fix it now? Why not say in perpetuity, dealing with pandemics today and tomorrow, you can get up to your salary no more? Because this won't end in 4 months. It's probably going to go on a lot longer.
One more question.
So to follow up to Manu's question, so at this time, you would object to fast tracking this bill if this change is not made? You would require the full cloture clocks, or no?
Or is an amendment vote
Yeah.
acceptable?
Right.
Just you'll accept whatever the body decides on
Yeah.
an amendment vote?
It is acceptable.
Oh, wait, but what if they don't allow you an amendment?
Yeah, what
The
if you
amendment
lose
vote
the
is
amendment vote?
acceptable, and I hope that we get
I
it.
don't think any of us are trying to talk process here. We're trying to start with.
But the
But
process
no,
is
no, no.
the
But if-
the
Process
market's
slows
waiting,
down the
yeah.
passage of the bill.
Oh,
Yeah.
I get all that. Obviously, we're partly
You do-
talking process.
Mike, sir?
but
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Thank you,
bet.
Senator.
Although when I see the Gamecocks lanyard on you, it feels like you're too much of a homer for these guys. We're not trying to talk process at this point. We're just admitting that over the course of the last 4 or 5 days, a lot of well-meaning people, again, this bill is way too big for any legislation that I desire, but America is in an urgent moment. So there's a lot of necessary urgent stuff that should move urgently. And yet, the interaction among a bunch of different components of the bill has led to an outcome that is quite different than a lot of people stated when the task forces were working 36 hours ago, which is what we're trying to do is we're trying to deal with the public health issues. We want to deal with the fact Steve Daines' Manhattan Project for vaccine acceleration. There are critical public health issues in this. But at the economic level of trying to provide relief for the American people going into the coronavirus recession, the stated purpose is to maintain employer-employee relationships. And when Republican senators were on a conference call for 92 minutes this morning, a lot of us learned for the first time that an assurance we'd been given in other settings maybe wasn't so. And that assurance was that you wouldn't actually fail to cap this such that you'd be accidentally incentivizing unemployment and the severing of that employee-employer relationship. That's what we don't want to happen. Thanks a lot.
This doesn't get fixed. Are you a
Okay,
no on the
so
overall
let me
bill?
just talk about myself. What's the most responsible thing to do? Is to fix it now because the problem's going to be around for a while. It's more responsible to make sure that in unemployment insurance setting, you don't get more than you actually make, because that does incentivize people to leave their employment. I'd like a vote on that. I think hopefully the body could come together. What's really irresponsible is to create an aid package that disincentivizes people from staying in the workforce in areas that we need. It's hard to compete against $24 an hour. So all I'm saying, and I've been a big champion of unemployment insurance, is let's just make sure we make people whole. Let's don't increase their salary, because we can't afford to do that, and you don't want to sever that employer-employee relationship. I think the most responsible thing to do is fix this now.
Senator
Tell us
Graham, have you
what-
spoken to?
If the amendment vote, if the amendment vote goes down, you'd be okay with moving the Pakistan to that after? I stopped rolling, but it's